Good morning, Parkwood Baptist Church. My name is Katie McKown, and I am so privileged to be gathered with you this morning. I'm grateful for Pastor Daniel's invitation to preach, and I'm grateful to serve alongside him at Leland. Today, we focus our attention on the homecoming king of the Old Testament, Moses, and in particular, the many mothers of Moses. I invite you to join me in reading from the book of Exodus, chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Hear these words of Holy Scripture. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. In case you haven't heard, the Washington Nationals are World Series champions. And since the 2020 season has yet to begin, we are not only the 2019 champions, 2020 is ours too, so far. I love the Nationals, but I grew up a St. Louis Cardinals fan. My mother was born in St. Louis, and her mother, my Grammy, would listen to Cardinals games on the radio and keep score. And that tradition continues with my mother and with me. We both love to keep score at baseball games. The tradition continues. I wonder if there are any traditions you continue from the women who've gone before you. Maybe it's a secret spaghetti sauce recipe, or perhaps you share her love of science or bowling or basketball or antiquing or any number of things. What tradition do you continue from the women who've gone before you? Today, we take a look at Moses, who continues the tradition of courage from the women who went before him. From Shiphrah and Puah, from Jochebed and Miriam and Pharaoh's daughter, the women I'm calling the many mothers of Moses. Before the burning bush, before the plagues, before the exodus from slavery, baby Moses was born to Jochebed. And while his birth was no doubt a happy occasion, there were no casseroles dropped at the doorstep or visits from neighbors or friends. Dangerous were the days of Moses' birth. Pharaoh was on the warpath. Pharaoh, who had already enslaved the Hebrew people, was not satisfied. So he made an edict that all Hebrew baby boys must be eliminated. This elimination was to be carried out by Hebrew midwives, but Shiphrah and Puah, the named midwives of Exodus chapter 1, did not follow through. Thanks to the courage of Shiphrah and Puah, little ones were saved. We rejoice in that courage, and we recognize these women directly defied Pharaoh, a dangerous decision if there ever was one. They had to have known they'd be discovered, and they were. But thanks to Shiphrah and Puah's cunning, Pharaoh was duped. Hebrew baby boys were born, and while Shiphrah and Puah may or may not have delivered Moses with their own hands, Shiphrah and Puah certainly mothered many babies into this world who otherwise would have been killed. Don't miss the courage of Shiphrah and Puah, the first of many mothers of Moses. Well, after Shiphrah and Puah, failed to get the job done, Pharaoh turned up the volume. He ordered his people to drown Hebrew baby boys in the Nile. And here's where we meet Jochebed, Moses' mother. This is where she enters the story. She is incredible for many reasons. Chief among them is hiding her baby for 3 months. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And not only is Jochebed hiding Moses from Pharaoh, she's hiding him from everyone who walks by her home. And this is not a soundproof house made of modern insulation you pick up at Lowe's. Noise and conversation could be easily detected. Can you imagine Jochebed's fear? After 3 months, Jochebed determines, she could hide Moses no longer. And according to experts, at 3 months old, babies begin to hold up their heads. Their vision focuses on objects and people, and they even begin to mimic the sounds and tones they hear. Baby Moses was growing, and he couldn't be hidden any longer. So, courageous Jochebed got to work. She procured a basket, but she wasn't satisfied with it. Jochebed MacGyvered that basket. She coated it with tar and pitch, making sure not one drop of water would seep through the basket's reeds. And speaking of reeds, another name for the Red Sea is Sea of Reeds. And do you remember who parted the Sea of Reeds? Yes, I could hear you all the way from Tuesday. It was Moses, the same baby Jochebed put in a basket of reeds, the same baby she put in the Nile. And where did she put Moses? In the Nile, amongst the reeds. So let's review. Baby Moses in a basket made of reeds was amongst the Nile's reeds, who would one day, by the power of God, part the Sea of Reeds. I love the Bible. Well, Moses' mother, Jochebed, courageously placed him in the Nile. And this is where Mother Miriam takes the baton. Mother Miriam? I thought Miriam was Moses' sister. Well, you're right. Indeed, Miriam is Moses and Aaron's big sister. But Miriam also mothered her brother. To mother someone is to protect, to love, to guide, to nurture. Exactly what Miriam did as she mothered Moses at the Nile. She watched out for him like a hawk. She was the anchor leg of the race to Moses' safety. And she was probably about 12 years old. That's a strong young woman. And parents of strong young women, take note. You are called to shepherd the gift of God, and you're strong Miriams too. The world needs her. The world needs all of them. Miriam bravely mothered Moses, which shouldn't surprise us because her own mother, Jochebed, bravely gave up her son so that he might live. Does that sound like any other biblical mother you know? Miriam mothered Moses by watching over him, by standing at a distance to see what would happen to Moses. And who in the world could have predicted what would happen next? Pharaoh's own daughter came down to the Nile to bathe. You remember Pharaoh, right? He's the one who instructed everyone to toss baby boys into the Nile. And ironically, Moses is a Hebrew baby boy. He is in the Nile. But he's been bravely mothered there by Shiphrah and Puah and Jochebed and Miriam. And now Pharaoh's own daughter sees this bundle of joy amongst the reeds. She hears Moses' cries and opens the basket to find a boy in the Nile, just where her father ordered baby boys to be. But miraculously, thanks be to God, Moses is alive. Can't you hear his little cries? Can't you see him lifting up his head to see the woman who will adopt him, Pharaoh's own daughter? Jewish tradition says Pharaoh's daughter birthed no children. So, was she a mother? Absolutely. Many mothers adopt. Many mothers are stepmoms, and many women mother church children and nieces and nephews. And in the New Testament, Jesus teaches us as much. Consider Jesus' words from the cross in John chapter 19. Jesus was dying, and his mom, his aunt, and a couple of other Marys, and the beloved disciple, they were mourning at the cross. And what did Jesus say to his mom? Woman, here is your son. Jesus is talking about the beloved disciple. Mary didn't birth the beloved disciple, but at the cross she adopted him. She became his mother. And to the beloved disciple, Jesus said, here is your mother. And he pointed to Mary, or I imagine him pointing to Mary. Friends, from the cross, Jesus reminded us family is bigger than those with whom we share a last name. Pharaoh's daughter didn't share Moses' last name, but soon she would adopt him as her son, and this was against the order of her father. The theme of bravery and courage continue. No wonder Moses led the people out of Egypt and out of slavery. His childhood was full of courageous women who looked evil in the eye and said, I don't think so. Pharaoh's daughter's adoption of Moses reminds us of the many generous women and men who adopt and foster. Many of you have adopted from overseas and others from foster care in the United States. Thank you. And please hear me. You are doing the work to which Jesus called Mary and the beloved disciple from the cross. Thank you. Thank you. And of course, there are other kinds of adoptive mothers and fathers. Church elders who slip a $5 bill in your kid's hand on their birthday. Those who rock babies in the nursery and give up precious vacation time to work. Vacation Bible school. Those who mentor teenagers and help lead youth group. You too follow in the footsteps of Pharaoh's daughter. Thank you for supporting and partnering with your village to parent children. Pharaoh's daughter rescued Moses out of the water, But her action is not the last instance of mothering in this story. When Pharaoh's daughter noted the baby was Hebrew, Mother Miriam piped up, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Can you imagine who Miriam might choose? Miriam went to Jochebed and took her to the Pharaoh's daughter, right there on Pharaoh's property. Again, the courage of the many mothers of Moses cannot be overstated. And Pharaoh's daughter not only asks Jochebed to nurse Moses, she offers to pay Jochebed. This is a bold move, friends. A Hebrew woman is now on Pharaoh's payroll, and she's nursing the boy who will rise up against evil, the boy who will say, "Let my people go," the boy who will lead the oppressed out of slavery, the boy who will answer and accept God's call. Pharaoh tried every which way to subvert God, but he came up empty. Thanks be to God. Moses continued the tradition of courage he saw in Shiphrah and Puah and Jochebed and Miriam and Pharaoh's daughter. What a gift. Friends, today I want to challenge you, women and men, to celebrate and thank the women who have mothered you, those who birthed you or adopted you, sisters who comforted you, aunts who had fun with you, mothers-in-law who made you their own, grandmothers who nurtured you, Sunday school teachers who taught you to love the Bible, deacons and youth group volunteers who discipled you. Who are the Shiphrahs, the Puahs, the Jochebeds, the Miriams, the Pharaoh's daughters in your life? Can you call these women today? Can you shoot them a text or an email, write a handwritten note maybe? And friends, if these women in your life have been laid to rest, if you are grieving today, hear me. God sees you and God is with you. Friends, I challenge you to give thanks for the women who've mothered you. Thanks be to God for the many mothers of Moses' life and the many mothers in our own. Amen.